From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The first criminal trial of Donald Trump begins in New York. What's happened so far, and what are the weaknesses of the case being built by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg? Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnists Kim Strassel and Bill McGurn. An extraordinary moment for the country, the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president who also happens to be the presumptive Republican nominee for the presidential election that is now only 7 months away. And many polls show him beating Joe Biden. The 34 felonies that are being brought here in New York relate to the 2016 hush money payment that Donald Trump made to Stormy Daniels as hush money for an alleged affair in 2006. And then the repayments of that and the internal accounting of those repayments to Trump fixer Michael Cohen. But the atmosphere this week at the court seems to belie the magnitude of what's going on. When the court opened on Monday, there were some preliminary rulings by Judge Juan Merchan. For example, he said that prosecutors would not be able to play the Access Hollywood tape for the jury. But by the afternoon, we were straight into jury selection. First group of 96 people who went through that screening were asked whether they could be fair and impartial, and apparently more than 50 raised their hands and were then excused. We're back doing that again today. Potential jurors being asked what they do for work, what their news sources are, if they've ever been to a Trump rally, and so on. The biggest notable piece of information, the biggest controversy on Monday seems to be whether Donald Trump was nodding off a little bit during this process. Here's a reporter from Courthouse News. Tough to see the screen in the overflow room, but I swear Trump is nodding off at the defense table. His chin just hit his chest, and then his head shot back up. We've all been there, unquote. Let's listen to a bit of President Trump's brief remarks after leaving the courtroom yesterday.
If you read all of the legal pundits, all of the legal scholars today, there's not one that I see that said this is a case that should be brought or tried. It's a scam. It's a political witch hunt. It continues, and it continues forever. And we're not going to be given a fair trial. It's a very, very sad thing. In addition, as you know, next Thursday, we're before the United States Supreme Court on a very big hearing on immunity. And this is something that we've been waiting for a long time. And the judge, of course, is not going to allow us. He's a very conflicted judge. And he's not going to allow us to go to that. He won't allow me to leave here for a half a day, go to D.C. and go before the United States Supreme Court.
Kim, what do you make of what has happened so far and the beginning of what could be a trial of 5 or maybe 6 weeks?
So I think this shows very clearly we could be in for even longer than 5 or 6 weeks. It was really remarkable the degree of dueling motions that were introduced on the first morning, having to do with everything. A request that the judge have to recuse himself, which he refused to do. These requests about Donald Trump being allowed to attend other hearings and other court trials. In particular, he was speaking there about the Supreme Court, and the judge said, no, this court is important. You must be here instead. Also issues, as you noted, about what can be allowed in the courtroom, this Access Hollywood tape, while the Trump team was victorious in that. There were other aspects of Donald Trump's work, for instance, with the National Enquirer, et cetera, that the judge said that he was going to allow to be put in. And then, of course, the jurors. I mean, when you have 96 jurors come in and immediately 50 of them are excused, it gives you a sense of the depth of the challenge of trying to find people that can actually judge a trial about a former president and leading presidential candidate now in an impartial way, and how slow this process can be. By the end of the day, after you'd had those 96 come in, 50 of them were immediately excused because of that. You'd only had 11 of the jurors questioned. A further 2 had been excused. Even though those that are remaining, it's not clear they will actually be on the final jury. There's still yet more to come evaluating them. But just going through the process of getting a potential jury pool is proving to be very slow. You add in here, again, ongoing controversies, jury selection, upcoming Passover holiday. I think this could actually last quite a long while.
Let's dig into some of the details. And as a reminder of the facts, in the run-up to the 2016 election, Donald Trump's fixer, Michael Cohen, paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels to keep quiet. And then over the course of 2017, he was reimbursed by Donald Trump and then some. And the way that that was booked internally was, according to the prosecutor, disguised as a payment for legal services. And so, Bill, what we have here is the indictment included 34 counts. Each of them is a charge for falsification of business records. And the way that you get to 34 is Alvin Bragg is charging each check, each ledger entry, each invoice from Michael Cohen separately. And one of the things that has been fascinating and was not answered by the original indictment was how this can be a felony. Normally, falsification of business records is a misdemeanor in the state of New York. And it's only a felony, according to the law, if the books are cooked with, quote, intent to commit another crime or to aid or conceal the commission thereof. And so the question, Bill, has been, what is the second crime that Alvin Bragg is going to allege here? Even if he hasn't charged it, even if it's not part of this case, there has to be a second crime. And it seems that the primary argument of the prosecution is going to be that President Trump falsified these business records in order to cover up a campaign finance violation, that the payment by Michael Cohen to Stormy Daniels was, in effect, a donation to the Trump campaign. And Bill, I wonder what you make of that.
It doesn't really matter what I make of it. I think most legal experts have seen it as exceptionally flimsy. In fact, of all the cases against Donald Trump, I think this is arguably the flimsiest, at least in terms on legal grounds. Look, as you point out, at most what he did that they can prove was a misdemeanor. And there's a 2-year statute of limitations that has long since passed. So they came up with this novel theory. And the problem is, if it's a campaign violation or something, that would be a federal crime. But the federal prosecutors looked at this and they refused to bring that action against it. So, I mean, to go from a misdemeanor that has expired under the statute of limitations to 34 felony counts, I think it's absurd. We haven't talked about this. We'll probably get into it later. But politically, I think this just helps Donald Trump. It's so obviously ginned up. And I think he's right to say no one that wasn't named Donald Trump would ever be charged like this.